Well, I've got 6 o'clock, let's start our meeting. I'm gonna give invocation, and if Tom, the flag salute, and we'll move on. Father, please put your arms around this community and we council members here tonight, taking care of the business of the city. Amen.
Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Greetings, everyone. Do we have any special presentations or recognitions this evening? All right. Moving number 4, consent agenda. All items listed are considered non-controversial and shall be approved by one motion of the governing body unless a request for discussion of an item is made by a council member. After discussion on the items, further action may be taken as deemed appropriate by the council. Do we have any questions? All right, we move forward. A, minutes of the regular meeting of the governing body from 11/5/2020. B, requisition register, item for payment, POs have already been issued and funds are encumbered. C, payment to Crawford and Associates in the amount of $19,820 for professional services rendered through 9/15/2020 and 10/15/2020. The register during the last meeting, but on the consent agenda for discussion with Frank Crawford if requested. D, payment to card services in the amount of $20,770.90 for the City of Blackwell credit card purchases for the month of October 2020. E, payment to Aztec Environmental Services in the amount of $5,170 for environmental site assessment, for a wood mount project. Approval of this item would bring expenses today to the amount of $73,730.45 of the $75,000 that has been approved by council for this purpose. And F, payment to Guernsey Engineering in the amount of $21,735 for professional services rendered for the 13th Street and Ferguson Avenue reconstruction. Want to put a note on the funds to be paid using BPT Street Department Fund, and reimbursement of the portion related to the hospital will be requested from BHTA Holdings through the loan proceeds of the hospital construction project. Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Markwart,
Aye.
Reagan,
Aye.
Khalil,
Aye.
Webb,
Aye.
Green.
Aye.
Number 5, reports, authority board reports.
That's me, okay.
Hello, everyone. Good to see you. As you know, for Veterans Day, we put 500 flags in the yard. So we did reach the 500 mark, and we had 4 or 5 different displays. We've had people come in, and that's still up for a couple more weeks. Right now, we're in the process of getting Christmas out and changing, but I did leave a little bit of Thanksgiving in the front for those of the people that made comments last year. We didn't wait till after Thanksgiving. So I was trying to please everyone as usual. So just want to thank you for your support, and if anyone has any questions. So, thank you. Thank you. Oh, I don't need that.
we have been busy painting the front part of the building, the shutters. Blackwell Public Power thankfully finished the rest of it for us. But we put up 6 fair-themed barn quilts. They're really cute. They have, I think, a corn cob and some other agriculture food items, a pig, a sheep, a horse. But if you haven't noticed it, take a look. We've also planted mums and some other fall plants along the planters downtown. We're gonna move some of the ones that just get burnt up during the summertime and are so hard to keep alive down to the museum and to the library where they'll look better and have a chance. We also decorated the glass windows downtown with chalk paint, and we put maroon spirit messages and sayings and welcome messages for the homecoming crowd coming in. It was well received, and we plan to make it bigger and better and have a bigger turnout for next year and maybe make it a yearly thing. We've also purchased 3 new Christmas displays, and they're gonna go up next week, and they're gonna be at the event center and around that area, around the fairgrounds. We're gonna have a 15-foot arch, a snowman family, and it's, I think it's about 6 foot, but it's big Christmas ornament holes, and they're stacked on top of each other, so we wanted to have somewhere for people to take selfies or take family pictures. Our committee's worked pretty hard on picking out what we have, but it's just the beginning stages of what we hope to be a future drive-through display down through the fairgrounds, and we have that on a 5-year plan. For the future, we have decided to do our s'more station again for the parade, but 2020 style. We're going to do to-go kits and let the kids or whoever wants them take them home, and they can make them in the microwave or oven. We're gonna either hand them out during the parade just to keep people from standing in line, and if not, we'll have a socially distanced line at the event center, and we're just kind of waiting on the final plans with what's gonna go on after the parade. And then Melissa at the museum, she's put together a fun little elf search, and there's several little elves hid throughout the museum, and when you get finished completing the hunt, she gives you a candy cane, but we decided to buy some elf hats, novelty ears, and little jingle necklaces to go along with it to kind of make it more exciting and more fun to go participate in that. And then for our long-term plans, we're still working on a soccer clinic for the Sutu Wolves. We'd love to have NOC come and help, but with COVID and the guidelines and public safety, we just haven't really been able to plan anything like that yet. But we're shooting for maybe March or April. And as of now, the bike tour that was supposed to come through last summer, the Oklahoma Free Will bicycles, they were gonna have their last leg of the race here at the event center. They were gonna camp out overnight, and they had to cancel that in June, so they're scheduled for Memorial Day weekend this next year, 2021, so we look forward to that. We also have been picking up on the geocaching and our geo coins that we've been giving out. We have 14 states that have visited so far, so we have 36 to go. We're gonna try to find out a fun way to get all 50 states represented here and visited Blackwell, Oklahoma. So that wraps it up, unless you have any other questions.
One thing, would you please state your name again and who you're with? We know
Alright.
for the recording, so they know.
Okay, Megan
Thank you.
Childers with the Blackwell Tourism Development Board.
Thank you very much. Next.
I'm John Robertson with Blackwell Industrial Authority. Pleasure to meet you. I hadn't met you yet, so congratulations. Just kind of the latest on the BIA, we've, recently bought a new building. A&A Tank is what it used to be. We're directly east of the, LA Boiler Works. Got a company, we've been working the last, 6 weeks, 2 months, getting it cleaned up, getting repainted, replacing some carpet, doing some things on the facility. I've got a company getting ready to move in December 1 is when their lease begins. It's a different division. We already have HMT here in town as a manufacturing operation. This is a different division of HMT. They've been in Tulsa and they're moving up here. They're still gonna have a presence in Tulsa. Since this all began probably 4 or 5 months ago, their world's changed a little bit. They originally were gonna move everybody from Tulsa up here, and they've left a handful of folks up there, but they're moving 2 different divisions up here. I really don't know what the total employment count's gonna be when it finally gets done, but we did get the lease in this week. Everything's signed, everything's done, so we're excited about that. We expect a dozen or so full-time positions out there. We had a representative from the Oklahoma Finance Authority was in town a couple of weeks ago. We went out and visited some of our larger manufacturers, BOSTD, CFM, and HMT. Basically, they had a program that could help with any energy-saving investment that they wanted to go through. That's basically what the presentation was about. CFM, you know, we had talked a few months ago about an expansion deal with this COVID. When that hit, they took a step back, and what they're doing right this minute is buying a new furnace to the tune of about $1 million investment on some new equipment. And so we're excited about that, and it'll probably be a year from now, but when the expansion conversation picks back up again. So all good. That's energy savings for them. Hopefully it'll be more efficient and you know, add a few more jobs. Every time they do this kind of stuff, it adds another handful of jobs. Duke Energy, if you've seen, they're the windmill. They're out in our industrial park. Their expansion, they're getting ready to put in another phase out here north of Blackwell, between Blackwell and the Kansas line. That's all working, everything's going. They published where all those windmills were gonna go, and they've already had one public meeting, I believe, down at the Expo Center down there. Talking to their folks, explaining what was happening and all that. We have written a grant proposal for EDA to the tune of about $1.6 million, if in fact we get it, to build another spec building out at Industrial Park. It's actually going to be across the driveway from Duke, where Duke's located. Right now, we're keeping our fingers crossed. There was a special COVID-related program that came out from the federal side, and we can get an 80% grant, assuming we get qualified for it. If not, then we would get the regular 50% grant. We hope to be able to do just like we had done with our first facility out there, and when we convinced Duke that this was the place to locate. And just a quick story, some of you have heard this. When they leased that building, it was twice the size that they really needed. And but since we had grant dollars involved, we were able to come up with a lease that the amount was less than they could build one for, bottom line. And we ended up with a 20-year lease and then 3 5-year extensions on top of that. So it's a generational lease thing. I've been in this business decades, and that's the first time I've ever had, probably the longest lease I've ever done before was a 10-year deal. So it was a pretty substantial thing. Now, we're hoping to be able to do this same thing again. We want to replicate that if possible. Through this grant, like I said, we've worked with Duke, we've told them what we wanted. Now, in the original building, we had talked about it was more than they needed. They ended up using the back half of the building. They literally have a fence in the center of the existing building, and it's all filled up with supplies for their wind farms in Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. Well, through the conversation, what our intent is hopefully they're gonna take this new facility, that one will become 100% warehouse distribution. The new one will then be their operation maintenance and another long-term deal, multiple generational type investment. So it's a great deal. They'll be adding approximately 20 to 25 new positions, excellent positions, young families, good income, exactly what you want. Now, when you have these kind of successes, the challenge is, where are they gonna live? Well, we've got a real opportunity right this minute. We've got a builder out of Ardmore that has indicated he hadn't closed on anything yet, so it's still just kicking tires. But he's gonna build 8 to 10 new homes off of 13th Street. There'll be 16,000 to a little over 2,000 square feet. We're extremely excited about that. I had a conference just this afternoon with Sean Haskins, your school superintendent, and he said, man, the weak link we've got in town is housing. Well, let me tell you what's happening. Now, this particular guy is going to also wants to build 25, if I remember correctly, individual, approximately 1,000 square foot units that he will keep and lease out himself. But there'll be new facilities. These homes will be your classic 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage type deal, which is exactly the gap we have screaming right now. Our hope is that those things get sold just real quickly. Blackwell Economic Development Authority, another one of our trusts, has the property up on Doolin that has been platted out with 14 lots. And we, best case scenario, we'll turn right around. That guy will be selling those, and we'll have a builder that wants to take those, and we'll get another 14 homes. And then we're probably gonna be okay for a little while. So, but anyway, we're excited about that. We think that's been a need that we've had locally for years, and the last housing addition that came in Blackwell was in 1990. So it just shows you how long it's been. It's time. So, questions?
Yeah, John, maybe I missed it, but go back to HMT, you said they're moving 2 divisions.
2 separate divisions will be coming into this new facility, where originally it was just this one.
Is it manufacturing or?
No, well, I don't know what the other ones are. I can tell you what the one was that we talked about early on. He just kind of shared this with me in conversation when we were touring the deal here just last week before we got the lease. But the original one, they have field operators. What they do is build big giant tanks. And they go to refineries, and they have a whole field staff that go out and work in these refineries. Well, this was gonna be they come in and get their trucks fixed and get all the equipment, all the parts they need on the truck, and then they shoot out. And he made the statement, when they're really ginning, which they're not right now because of COVID, but it could be up to 150 people that'll be coming in and out. So, plus the dozen permanent folks that'll be here. I do not know what the other divisions are that he talked about. Like I said, he just mentioned them in conversation, and I'm in the selling mode when we're doing that, so I don't quiz him a whole lot. So, we need to close this thing, So, anyway, that's where we are, and I'll get more information. We'll know a whole lot more, but it's all good. We're all sitting there and excited about it. They've been fantastic tenants for us. and I don't see them going anywhere for a long, long time, so, good deal.
Thank you.
I cut you an email the other day, too.
All right.
So,
Thank you.
just FYI. All right.
Thanks,
Thank you.
John, appreciate it. Next, any more board reports? All right, what we're excited about is Frank coming up to give us a finance report.
That's something I haven't ever heard before. Usually it's a dreading when I show up, especially when I wear a mask. It's one thing about somebody walking up to a podium talking about money while wearing a mask. It's just unsettling. Well, thank you, Mayor, and gosh, thank you for letting me miss last month. I've had an interesting last 2 months, for lack of a better word. My wife had a bad bout with COVID, and as you may have already heard, was in the hospital for 43 days, 33 days in ICU, with 17 of those days in a coma and on a ventilator. But as of today, she's been home for 3 weeks. She feels great. She looks great, and probably is as close to normal as we could have gotten her, other than just a little winded. But other than that, back to normal. So thank you for allowing Marcy to come and do the presentation last month, and thank you for all the city employees and everybody who was checking on me and saying wonderful things on social media. I appreciate all the support to get us through that. So let's talk about money. The masked man says. Again, we're 4 months into the year, and by the way, you've changed chairs on me, so it's taken me a while to get used to what's going on here. Because last time, different mayor, and Ms. Green, I don't think you were on the council either, so welcome. And I'll try not to be too redundant with the numbers, but I try to reduce this into its simplest form, just because that's the way it makes sense to me. So hopefully it will all make sense to you. But very briefly, what we do every month is we kind of talk about money coming in and money going out, and what we started with, and basically what math leaves us with at the end of that process. And I've kind of compared the city's financials to a big pair of pants. Instead of 2 pockets or 4 pockets, we wear a pair of pants that have about 20 pockets, which is not the greatest fashion statement in the world. I wouldn't be caught dead wearing a pair of pants with 20 pockets on it, but that's what we're stuck with. And they're more like MC Hammer pants, where the 2 front pockets are like way baggy and are really big, and the rest of the pockets don't have that much room in them. But that's the way the city's finances are. Is we've got basically our money segregated into 20 pockets because of different laws and regulations that require us. But 2 of our pockets are really big, where the bulk of all the activity runs. We call it the general fund pocket and the public works authority or municipal authority pocket. And so that's where the bulk of all our people are, the bulk of most of our operational costs, and most of all of our revenues, whether they be utilities or taxes or grants or whatever, run through. Then we have 18 other pockets where we've got specialized money, maybe a restricted sales tax or a donated amount of money that we can only do certain specific things with. And we watch that money, but it doesn't have a whole lot of activity. And so most of those smaller pockets either don't have a lot of money or they don't have a lot of activity, but yet we track that stuff because we must. But we watch and keep an eye on the really 2 big pockets, and that's what we usually talk about here, is how our monthly operational stuff looking, knowing that we've got special pockets to buy capital outlay and to build buildings and to build roads. And we watch that too, and you see that, but we probably pay more attention to the 2 really big pockets. And so that's what I'm going to walk you through here, and then we'll talk about some sales tax, and then we'll talk about, what would happen if we turned the pair of pants upside down, we shook all the money out of it. Do we have more money or less money than what we started with at the beginning of the month? And you can kind of get an idea of how the city's doing by looking at that. So the first page in your financial packet is the monthly analysis of the last 4 months of the general fund. And I know that this is really busy, and I'm trying to put as few numbers as I can here to make it make sense, but
you have two columns. Basically, we have a column called the original budget, which is the budget that we adopted before the year, plus or minus any amendments that you have approved up to this point, and I think you've approved 4 different amendments that are factored into that. But if you kind of walk down that column, it's basically like reading a mathematical equation up and down instead of left to right. If I told you that I wanted to read it from left to right, we would basically say, how much money did I start with? How much money did I deposit? How much money did I write checks for? And then what did math leave me with at the end of the day? Well, now we're just going to do the same thing. We're just going to do it up and down. And so in the budget, we predict, what we think the city's going to start the year with, and we predict what we think it's going to end with. And if you look at the general fund, the very first number you see in the budget column says $2,315,000. That's basically what we projected we were going to start with on July 1. But again, we were projecting it back in March or April, so kind of trying to predict what it was going to be. Then we add our revenues and expenses and transfers in and transfers out, and we were basically going to end in that year with about a $70,000 decrease to cash. So if we started with $2,315, we spend $70,000 more than we bring in, that means we're going to end with about $2,245. So not complicated. Again, all guesses, and we try to amend this during the year as it goes along. Originally, we started with a break-even budget, but again, different things happen, different expenses occur, and so it's still pretty close to break-even. And then at the end of the day, we measure what's left over and say, well, how much of that is a percentage of our annual budget? And that's $2,245,000 is about 43% of your entire budget, which means that you could literally go almost half the year next year and not collect a dime and still pay out all the yearly expenditures without having to borrow money or do anything like that. So it's a very comfortable cushion. But the more important column is what's going on at the right. So here's what we've got. We've got 4 months of data in, which is about 33% of the year, basically a third of our year, which means that we ought to be able to watch the revenues and expenses coming in at about that pace. Anything that's above or below means something weird's going on. Well, the very first number you look at of revenue is $1,389,000, which is 69% of our entire revenue budget. So the first thing you say is, well, man, you're terrible at guessing revenue if you thought it was going to be 33% and instead it's 69%. Well, what you don't see in here is that at about late July, the state allocated $77 per person to each city and town in Oklahoma out of their CARES money. And all we had to do was jump through a few hoops, and they were going to reimburse us for all of our public safety personnel costs that we had incurred back to March. So the total amount they'd allocated to us was about a little over $500,000. Well, it happened to come in this month, even though we had spent it back in March and April and May and June. And so our revenues are a little bit distorted because we haven't amended the budget for that unanticipated revenue. So if you took about $500,000 out of that, that percentage would drop down to about 40%, still running ahead of where it would normally be, but that's why that number is so outrageously different. Now, what's going to happen next month is you'll probably see us amend the budget to show that we have this new revenue, and now you're going to propose to do something with it. And so we will probably come to you with some amendments next month to kind of modify this a little bit so it doesn't look so wacky off the bat. Now, if you look at the expense number, it looks right on track. It's sitting at about 33.9, so it's kind of right where it ought to be. And so the math of that shows that, okay, we've collected $1,300,000 or $1,400,000, we've spent $1,700,000, that's a $380,000 difference. However, we're not done because we have other funds transferring money to us, other pockets that are reimbursing us. So we have BPT contributions coming in from the BPT revenues, and then we have the municipal authority that provides us with a subsidy, if you will. So that by the time those revenues come in, and we make a few other adjustments for the cash basis, we've basically increased our cash balance from by about $643,000. So instead of 23 or 2.3 million at the beginning of the year, we now have about 2.9, almost $3 million. So the general fund is now up to 57% of its annual revenue stream. But again, you kind of have to say, well, if I walk $500,000 off that for that reimbursement of the grant, then it seems much more normal. But right now it's there, it's here, it's in our cash account, so we have to count it. So general fund looks good, But I would imagine that we're going to amend the general fund to do something with that 500,000. So a plan's gonna come to you probably in the next couple of months where you'll see that we're proposing to do something or to put that money to use, or to put some of it to use. But the general fund's in great shape, probably in as good a shape as I think it's in good a shape as I've ever seen it. And I think it's as in good a shape as it's probably ever been based on just looking at sort of past years. The next pocket is the municipal authority, which is our other big pocket. And again, behind each of these little summaries, if you want to see more numbers, there's the actual printout that ties to all the revenues and expenses and transfers that follow it. So if you want to know more about the detail, you can certainly see it there. The municipal authority was set up the same way, and the budget column is basically it was going to break even. In other words, we were going to start and end with the same number if things go exactly the way we planned. Well, things never go exactly the way it's planned, so there's always going to be a variance. So if you look in the year-to-date actual column, and you see that we started with about 800,000, you can look at all the mechanics of the numbers and skip down to the very bottom, and you see the line called ending cash, and it's 921,000. So shortcutting this form, you can basically say we've brought in about 99,000 or 100,000 more than what we spent out. So if we continue to do that, that's wonderful, because at best we had thought this thing would break even. Well, it's doing a little better than break even right now. However, if you go look at the percentages, you might see both the percentages are running high. We've got extra expense that's going on right now that actually has some engineering costs in both water and the electric area, where we're actually going to use capital money to reimburse that. So those expenses are going to come back in line a little bit later. And then, of course, utility revenues, they don't come in 1/12 of the year every month. There are some months where we generate a lot of utility revenue, and then some months where we don't generate very much utility revenue. So we usually start out ahead, and then as the winter months get closer, we start lining that percentage up. But 40% is running about 7% ahead through October. But again, we've got 2 or 3 of our really big months in this year already, and those aren't going to repeat again until probably May or June of 21. And so we're as basically close to being on budget there as we could be, factoring in those special circumstances. And this fund balance or this reserve is not near as plentiful as the general fund one. I mean, we're about 7%, 7.5% of our annual revenue stream. So in theory, the BMA wouldn't be able to operate near as long as the general fund, obviously. But this fund balance or this reserve has always been problematic in the BMA, and it again actually has as much of a balance as it probably had in quite some time. So both main pockets operationally are doing great, which is all we can ask for. We don't usually amend the 2 operating budgets very much because we're pretty comfortable that we've got most of the year-to-date activity thought of in there, but then CARES money comes in or something unique comes in, and we do have to amend the budget. Most of the amendments that you usually see are amending those other pockets where we finally decided what we're going to do with pocket 19. And so we now have to appropriate money to allow it to be spent. So those amendments, which we'll talk in a little bit, affect a couple of other funds. So those are your 2 big pockets. We have another pocket, the BPT allocation fund, that has a lot of money in it, but it doesn't have a lot of checks written out of it. It has about $3.5 million, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, but that's just money waiting for you to appropriate it to be spent on capital, which every month I think you see a few amendments come in where we're saying, okay, we have a street project, or okay, we have a water project, or we have something where we want to spend that money on. All right, so if you haven't figured it out by now, the 2 big pockets live on maybe 2 different streams of revenue. The BMA lives off utilities, the general fund lives off of sales and use tax. So if we can watch what those revenue streams are doing, we can kind of keep track of how that's going on. So the next sheet kind of takes the general fund or the city pocket again and says, well, let's look at our main revenue driver and see how it's doing. And so we prepare this monthly sales tax comparison, since sales tax is the bulk of our stream of revenue. And for the entire fiscal year, we had budgeted about 2.5 million, 2.560. That's the middle column there. And of course, we've got now we've got 5 months of collections. I can actually go through November since they deposit that in our account in November, early November. So if you kind of look at the fiscal 21 column where you see 5 numbers that add up to $1,322,000, compared to the total budget of $22,560,000, what that basically means is I can run these by month where I can predict a variance. In other words, are we collecting more sales tax than what we thought we were going to collect, or collecting less? Well, as you can see, in every month we've collected almost 50,000, if not more than 50,000, of what we had anticipated. So the sales tax is actually doing extremely well. Over 4 months, we're already ahead by $235,000 of where I thought we would be at the end of October. But another measure is, well, how does it look compared to the 4 months ending October of last year? Because last year, I remember you told us it was a good year too. Well, we're already ahead of that pace by 104,000. So when I predicted that COVID was going to wreck our sales tax, I probably couldn't have been more wrong. It's actually helped us because people are staying local and buying local. They're, instead of going somewhere else to buy, they're either buying here, and I've even seen rumors of larger cities whose people leave the larger city to come buy in the smaller city just to avoid the congestion of the larger city stores. So you may be getting some residual from that. So again, all positive news on sales tax, and I keep warning you, one of these months you're going to see a bracket show up, and brackets are bad when you put them around numbers. But luckily, no brackets on any of these schedules yet. So, but it's coming, so I'm going to warn you. I just don't know when. But that's my caution tale. I'll be right someday, where we'll be short something. So good, good streams of revenue, everything looking good, and COVID, economically has actually helped us. The next schedule is a schedule of cash accounts where I literally add up every amount of cash and investments that we have. So I'm literally turning the pants upside down and I'm shaking all of the pockets out to see what drops out. And what drops out is about $13.1 million. What was that compared to the shakeout last month? It was $12.5 million, so about 600,000 up, which makes sense because remember, 500,000 of it was the money we had anticipated coming in from the grant, and then we said that the BMA was operating at about 100,000 profit. So if you hold everything else constant, there's basically your increase in cash. So I put the schedule together just so you have an idea of what the 20 pockets look like and how much funds are in each of the 20 pockets. And again, some of those funds invest these in CDs and savings. Some of them keep the cash on hand for operating. But as long as we kind of monitor the total amount of cash and investments on hand on a monthly basis, you can kind of pretty much predict whether we're bringing in more money or we're spending more money altogether. And so that's the purpose of that schedule. And again, you can kind of see the 20 different pockets, and outside of the 2 main pockets, each pocket has a purpose. Each fund has a purpose. Now, on that schedule, there is a fund that has probably more money than anyone else, and it's Fund 300, which is called the BPT Allocation Fund. And what that means is that we have about 3.3 million, a little over 3,346,000 of money that is ours, that has been provided to us by the BPT. It is in our bank accounts now, and it is waiting for you or the city to develop a plan of how we're going to spend it. So it all has to be spent on different purposes. So much for water, so much for sewer, so much for capital, so much for private projects or community enhancement. And if you want to see the breakdown of that 3.3 million, that's the very next page, which is basically a breakdown of the four main purposes now: water, streets, community enhancement, and capital improvement, with private projects now kind of rolling into capital or community enhancement. And so you can kind of see each of those little sub-pockets within the pocket, I guess is the easiest way to explain it, of how much money is there waiting to be appropriated. And those are the ones that you see most of the amendments for, including tonight. Once the city decides how they want to proceed with how much of the money they want to spend, you have to appropriate it monthly or in advance before you can spend it. That's the control mechanism that you have. We budget those operating funds all the way through the year. We wait until you guys need the capital money to budget it by priority. And so that's why when you see amendments, which you'll see here a little bit later, why you don't see those in the two main pockets very often. You just see them mostly for the smaller pockets and the smaller funds. So, I did not finish in 3 minutes, and I hope surely you're teasing me that Marcy only takes 3 minutes to explain all this. Because if she does, then I'm gonna start sending her back here and disappear. I just wanna get you away from this excitement that you feel every time I approach the podium. So,
Frank, I want to thank you because this one is always exciting for me. That we keep moving forward and we can pay for it.
well, I appreciate being able to deliver the info, and again, if it's not understandable, then let me know so I can figure out a way to make it more understandable. And I think we're not doing the amendments until another couple steps down. So, any questions about the monthlies?
Any questions? Frank, thank you very much. Do appreciate you.
I'll hang around for a few more minutes.
Okay, we're on to business. Discussion, possible action. A, the city council will hear public comments, but discussion by and between members of the governing body and the public is discouraged in order to adhere to the agenda item and ensure compliance with Open Meeting Act. Speakers will use sign-in sheet prepared by the city clerk and shall include their name, address, and the agenda item they wish to address. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and must be directed respectfully to the mayor.
I have none.
Okay, excellent. We move forward. B, consider approval of budget amendment number 5.
All right, so as I had previously mentioned, we have 3 amendments tonight for 3 of the 20 pockets. These are going to be not the 2 main pockets. These are some of the special pockets that we talked about. The first one in Fund 141, the Blackwell Facilities Authority Fund. This fund basically is just a fund that's existed for quite some time, but we haven't really used it to its capacity. And so what we're going to do basically is now try to do maintenance and capital of certain facilities in this authority. But since this authority doesn't really produce revenue, we have to get money over there. And so normally we would be doing this maintenance and capital out of the BPT allocation fund, but we're going to shift about $300,000 for these expenses. I believe mostly 150 is for the livestock pavilion, 25,000 for the event center, 50,000 for the softball complex, and then 75,000 of just maintenance, miscellaneous maintenance. That adds up to about 300,000. So the way to get the money over there is to just transfer that from the BPT allocation that was going to be used to pay for that anyway. So literally it's 300 in and 300 out. That's why it has very minimal impact on cash reserves or anything. It's just basically a way to kind of track the maintenance and capital of certain facilities, which is kind of what that facilities authority was created to do anyway. You'll see that amendment roll back in, I think, when you adjourn this meeting and then roll into the BFA, but it's the same thing. So you're just going to approve it on this side because it was going to be something that the general fund would have done with its BPT allocation. So you'll see the in, the out here, and the in over there. The next one is the Capital Expenditure Sales Tax Fund, Fund 212. Again, another capital fund, a capital pocket where it has about $600,000 of beginning money. It's bringing in money from the sales tax that's dedicated for these capital purposes. And so whenever you get ready to spend some of that capital on certain things, you appropriated it. And so tonight you're going to appropriate about $44,007 for an ice machine, a life pack, and a power cot upgrade, and body cameras for the police. And so again, that money's already there, waiting for you to appropriate it, and so that amendment basically appropriates what you're wanting to do for this month. The last amendment is for that big BPT allocation fund where the 3.3 million sits. Here, we're appropriating 2 things. We're appropriating about $400,000, a little over $400,000 of various expenses. Basically, the $300,000 that's going over to the BFA is coming out of this BPD allocation fund, so you see the outside of the transaction on this one from the inside on the other. Then $79,000 of street capital outlay and about $30,000 of community enhancement for dilapidated structures. And because we have some miscellaneous revenue that we had not anticipated, about $79,000, we're going to show that coming in, so that basically the net amendment is the 409 minus the 79, because the 79 is going to pay for the street capital outlay. And so basically you can kind of see the impact on the fund balances on the right and how the cash rolls. So really nothing very crazy there. That's the fund that has ultimately the 3.4 million. But again, some of that money is by various purposes and split up into sub-pockets. So here we're just appropriating that miscellaneous revenue stream, about $400,000 of capital. So, and again, I don't know how to emphasize this and to make sure that people understand this. That money is already in our pockets. We have it. We're not waiting on it. We're not taxing anybody any extra. It's money we've got in the bank, waiting to be spent, just waiting on a priority or a purpose, which is what you guys do on a monthly and annual basis. So that money's already here. It's already ready to go, and it doesn't affect the two main pockets at all. So, and that's it. That's all our amendments for tonight. Any questions?
Council, anyone have questions?
No.
All right, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion for the budget amendment number 5.
Second it.
Markwart,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Balil,
Aye.
Webb,
Aye.
Green.
Aye.
Okay, I think that'll do it for me. Thank you guys. We'll see
Thank
you.
you, Frank.
Cross my fingers. I'll see you next month.
We're on C now, discussion and update of COVID-19.
I've asked
Where's that emergency management guy?
There he is, there he is.
We'll take you all the way back to March 15th. The city of Blackwell signed a disaster emergency proclamation due to coronavirus pandemic, and that was the beginning of it when things started shutting down and people started getting sick. On March 16th, an emergency proclamation was signed declaring the state of emergency for the city of Blackwell. That way we'd be eligible for all the funding through the CARES Act.
That we just received.
Yes,
The
it was.
$500,000.
Then on April 22nd, Governor Stitt announced a bounce back plan. To reopen the state to business activities, the city of Blackwell adopted that plan and moved forward. The city of Blackwell followed suit with recommendation from Governor Stitt, the CDC, and the Oklahoma Department of Health. Oklahoma is steadily rising of positive cases each day, and K County is following suit. K County total number, as reported of last night, or yesterday, 11/18/2020, 1,344 cases with 21 deaths. Blackwell has a total number of reported cases as of 11/18/2020 and 152 cases, 3 deaths, and 107 recoveries. Right before the meeting started, I got an update. That update was Blackwell has 162 cases, 3 deaths, with 118 recoveries. ICU beds are very limited in Oklahoma for COVID-19 patients, with a steady increase in cases within our state. Governor Stitt has announced as of 11/19/2020, all restaurants and bars must close at 11 p.m. until the pandemic is controlled. With the daily new hospital admissions remaining at high levels, the Oklahoma State Department of Health and the City of Blackwell ask all citizens and visitors to please follow these recommendations. Do not gather without a mask with individuals living outside of your household. Always wear a mask in public places. Limit gatherings beyond immediate household members until cases and positive tests decrease significantly. Also with that report, I'll give you some other information that's just for information only. It's not on the agenda.
We'll probably refer to that whenever we get to another agenda item on the radios.
There are two companies that manufacture medication, and they have manufactured a vaccine, and they're waiting for approval to start dispersing that. And the last report I heard that it's going to come out in 4 phases. The first phase will be for nursing homes and nursing home staff, and then hospitals, doctors, EMTs, police officers, first responders. And then, I can't remember who the 3rd phase was, but then the 4th phase will be for the general public. Any questions?
All right, Corey, thank
Thank
you,
you.
appreciate it. All right, D, second reading, discussion and action of approval of ordinance number 2020-21. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Blackwell, Oklahoma, amending Part 2, Chapter 10, Article 2 of the Blackwell Municipal Code 2019, entitled Emergency Medical Service, by the amendment of Section 10-23, entitled Emergency Medical Service established by the amendment of Section 10-24, Administrative Control, by the amendment of Section 10-26, entitled Definitions, by the amendment of Section 10-27, entitled Services to be Rendered, by the amendment of Section 10-28, entitled Charges for Services, by the amendment of Section 10-29, entitled Subscription, by the amendment of Section 10-30, entitled Collection and Use of Ambulance Fees, by the amendment of Section 10-31, entitled Subscriber Fees, by the amendment, by the amendment of Section 10-32, entitled Assignment, providing for ambulance subscription program, providing for repealer, savings, codification, severability, and declaring an emergency.
This is the second reading on the EMS subscription ordinance, allowing us to offer a subscription to anybody that lives in our EMS district, a fee of $5 a month. And basically, if they subscribe and we respond to their house, we'll bill their insurance, and then they will not be responsible for the remainder if their insurance doesn't cover it all. It is a cheap insurance, especially in a time of need like right now with, I can't hardly breathe this thing.
I know.
With COVID-19. Patients are going into ICU for 20, 30 days at a time, coming out with extra large bills. They don't need to worry about a small EMS bill on top of all that. Just asking for approval to be able to offer this to our citizens.
If this is adopted, it would go in with an emergency clause, it would go into effect immediately, but we wouldn't start making charges on bills until January 2021. And the public would have December the opportunity to come in here and opt out. Come in here and say, oh, we don't want it. Now, if they didn't get it, they wouldn't get no-cost ambulance service, no-charge ambulance service. But that's the way we've set it up, so that it becomes effective now. We would make the charge in January, but during the whole month of December, they could opt out. We have opt-out forms for folks to opt out. In some of my communities where we have this, we have 25% that opt out, you know. But most folks that stay in it, in particular, use it, find it to be good insurance. The funds, of course, are going to be used to help with EMS, to help get
equipment,
training, and the like to make this service better. And one of the reasons we're doing this is that You know, there is no county funding for this. The county has the duty to provide EMS service to all the county residents. Last time I checked, all Blackwell, city of Blackwell folks live in the county, but they don't do that. We are trying to get them directed in that way. We've been trying now for about 14 years or so. But it is a way that citizens can help the service, can help with capital, and then also get an extreme benefit with no charge ambulance service. So we are asking you to consider this. This is the second reading. I think I've told you before that if you do, you'll be the third community on this I-35 route that has this. Right now you're different because you don't have it. Because both, Perry and Tonkawa do have this and have been using these funds for their communities. In Perry, it's like yours. In Tonkawa, it's mandatory. There is no opt-out clause. I mean, everyone that's got an electric bill pays this fee. We just thought here that providing for that opt-out would be more appropriate.
Council, any discussion?
Yeah, I'm curious, if you got electricity, you're automatically going to be charged $5 unless you choose to come in. What about the elderly that's not, if they're not able to come in? Have we made allowances for those people?
Well, if folks call, we will get the form to them. We are going to go out and advertise this program, and advertise this opt-out. And because it's a new program, we're gonna have to work with it. But yeah, I mean, we intend to advertise the program, advertise the benefit, and advertise the opt-out form and procedure, and I mean, you can download it. If you don't know how to do computer, we can mail it to you. But I mean, we actually want a signature on that, because if you opt out, you're not gonna get the service. We have to have a record that you've said no thank you, and this not just goes for you, the utility customer, it goes for everybody in your home. It goes to everybody in your home.
Now, you said won't get the service. Surely that's not right.
Well,
They'll
no.
get ambulance service if need be, it's just as we currently do.
They won't get the no charge ambulance subscription.
Okay.
That is correct. Of course they'll get the service.
Okay, well, I heard you, I understood you to say, they wouldn't get the service. I guess this is all right, but, we just sit here and listen to what our financial picture is. And I kind of hesitate to say, why do we put another fee on the citizens? Okay? We're providing it now. We're doing well. We're doing better than that.
But when we provide the service, they still have to pay the difference of the insurance does. It's an insurance policy is what it is, basically.
It is an insurance policy.
And if you don't want it, then you can opt out. I don't think we should make it mandatory, but.
Our EMS service is a basic service, which means all we can give is basic care. We can splint brakes, we can control bleeding, we can give you CPR, we can do just about everything but give you medication. And in order to drive our service forward and be able to help firemen go through paramedic school, which is about anywhere between $6,000–7,000 to $10,000. It's a 2-year program. This will help pay for that. And that way we can train our own firemen that we hire right here in Blackwell to be paramedics, and not hire somebody in that's gonna leave and go back to Oklahoma City as a paramedic and make more money.
Okay, well, I understand that, but again, you know, Frank just give us a glowing picture of how we are doing financially. So it would look to me like we've got monies to do that, simply request it.
I don't think that you're connecting the dot with insurance, because even if people have insurance, the insurance only covers a certain amount, and we have people that have outstanding bills of $350, $400, or whatever that they still owe to us. And what we're saying is, let's offer them where they can pay $60 to us, and whatever their insurance pays is gonna be enough. And so this is an offset that says we'll write off the rest of that if we know that, you know, we've got your subscription here. So it saves them money, because I have had phone calls that, Corey, I'm like you, I can't really believe this. I have had phone calls from residents who have had outstanding bills with us that have worked with federal agencies to try to get those amounts paid. They've worked with lots of other entities, and they, little by little, will whittle away the money that is still outstanding that we go through Mediclaims, you know, to get. So this is a policy that says, no matter how many times you have to use our ambulance services in a year, you pay us $60 and we will write off whatever amount it is that you would owe to us. And this has been requested by people in the community. We're not making up another way for a revenue stream here. We're actually giving the people what they've asked for. And what we're saying is that we've designated this for a use that will benefit our community. We're working on paramedics right now, and we have 3 guys that we think are going to be paramedics in January. And we will be a huge way ahead of the road, because we're able to offer the paramedics and get them here. So this is very good for a lot of reasons, but it certainly isn't a good thing because we're levying some kind of another fee on the residents.
And a lot of times, insurance only pay half of the bill, depending on what type of insurance you have. Medicare, Medicaid are bad about just paying a half or a third of it, which the remainder falls back on the patient. And a lot of times they don't have the money to pay that, and that end up goes to collections, which hurts their credit even worse. And it just pains me to have an elder person call me and say, "Hey, I can't afford that. What can we do?" If we could offer them $5 a month to be able to pay that, basically it's just kind of paying towards it, just a down payment towards it.
Well, it also help when you're offset your write-off costs as well.
Yes.
So, I don't know how many utility customers we're talking about, but I'd say well over 2,000. So that cost would help tremendously as far as offsetting your write-off costs.
And this is in the county too. I mean, this opens it up to anybody, even if they're not a utility customer. And they can just come in, because it's anywhere that we respond.
Yes, and our response is from T Street to the east, up to Canteen, over to Main Street, straight up Main Street to the state line, from Maine to Grant County line, south to Prospect. So it's a big coverage area. And I've had patients when we respond, they really need to go to the hospital, but they don't want us to take them because they can't afford the ambulance ride and the hospital bill.
Well, perhaps it's a good option for some. It's, as long as there's an opt-out.
Yes.
For those that would choose.
Well, the county's talked about a tax for a long time, and I don't believe it's ever gonna happen to help with the ambulance service, so, and, I think it's a big benefit to have the subscription to help, $60 a year is not very much for an insurance for an ambulance. Average ambulance bill is probably what?
If it's in-town ambulance run, about $1,100-1,200. If it's a transfer, you're looking at anywhere from 1,800 to 3,500.
Any more discussion? All right, do we have?
I'll make that motion to approve ordinance 2020-21.
I'll second.
Markwart,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Balil,
Aye.
Webb, Green.
Aye.
E, declare the emergency of ordinance 2020-21.
So moved.
Second.
Markwart,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Balil,
Aye.
Webb, Green.
Aye.
F, consider approval of emergency ordinance 2020-22, an ordinance adopting and enacting and recodifying a code of ordinances for the city of Blackwell, Oklahoma, to be known as the Blackwell Municipal Code 2020, establishing the same, providing for the repeal of certain ordinances not included therein, providing for the manner of amending and supplementing such code, providing for publishing the title of each chapter and a condensed list or summary of their content and authority, providing for an emergency.
We've done a lot of ordinances in the last 2 years. And what this does is this puts all the ordinances that you've adopted into one book. And so we have to give notice, everything that you've done, it puts into this book. And since that's online, you approve it, the public can get exactly what all the laws are in the community without having, in one stop, without having to look at other ordinances. Oh, I'm sorry, that changed, and you're looking at the wrong one, And so that's kind of what we're doing. Since, we could have supplemented it, but this is 2020, what an amazing year, 2020. And so, Blackwell Municipal Code 2020, and then we'll go through and supplement it after that. There were a few changes. I gave you a memo on that, that we hadn't brought before you as ordinances, but you can pass them as amendments, just like if you have, some language that you need to clear up or some spellings that you need to clear. When you put out the new code, that becomes your code of ordinances. One, and I gave you a memo on this. One has to do with police dash cam videos. And we provided a little amendment that just provides the time periods within which we have to hold those videos and when we can destroy them. Of course, if there's a case involved, litigation involved, anything like that, we're going to keep it for the full course of the case or the litigation. But otherwise, this is a whole lot of videos, and it's time. That all costs money to store that, and so we want to clean it. It's 3 years for serious ones, and 180 days for traffic tickets and things like that. So that's one. Another one was that the code said that the fire chief was appointed by the city manager with the consent of the city council. Now, that's not found anywhere in the charter. And in fact, what's found in the charter is that the city manager appoints the fire chief, that position. There is still some language about the police chief, which we won't talk about. It's been the subject of some charter amendments that we've tried to get passed, but there is something in the charter about the council's relation to the police chief, but not the fire chief. So it seems to me that was a little mistake that we found. We thought that we ought to clean that up. The other ones really have to do with this term mayor and city council. Mayor and city council. You're not really a mayor and city council. You're a city council. I mean, that's what you are. Now, there are times when mayors make decisions, like the mayor appoints the members of the planning commission. That's by statute. And there's some stuff in the charter where the mayor makes the nomination. So we didn't affect any of that. But there were a few instances here where it said the mayor and city council, and we just thought it was clear, or just said the mayor, who really doesn't have any power other than what's provided in the charter, any more than any members of the council. So we wanted to make sure that that was tied back to the council. There's just a few simple ones, and they have to do with variances and flood control and that. But we thought this would be a good time to clean that. But other than that, there are no other changes. It's just what you approve. And so these were just to kind of clean up the rest of the code. And we would ask that you adopt this. I think that the agenda says that since you passed that ambulance subscription fee ordinance with an emergency, I'm going to go ahead, if you pass this with an emergency, I'm going to stick that back in there. So as of, right now, and post this online, the public will be able to view exactly what all of our laws are. So we would ask that you approve both F and H is the same thing. It is just part of the procedure for codification and ordinance, adopting a recodified municipal code. Yes.
Council, any questions?
Do we need to do each one separately?
Yeah, do the ordinance and then the emergency and then the resolution.
I'll make a
Also.
motion to consider ordinance 2020-22.
I'll second it.
Markwart,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Balil,
Aye.
Webb,
Aye.
Green.
G, declare the emergency of ordinance 2020-22. I'll make that motion.
Second.
Markwart,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Balil,
Aye.
Webb,
Aye.
Green.
H, consider approval of resolution number 2020-0014, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Blackwell, Oklahoma, notifying the public of the publication of the recodification of the Blackwell Municipal Code 2020, setting the price for written copies of the code, directing the city clerk to, 1, file a copy of the resolution in the office of the county clerk of K County. 2, file a copy of the code in the K Law Library. And 3, file at least 3 copies of the code in the office of the city clerk, declaring an emergency. Discussion?
I'll make the motion to approve the resolution number 2020-0014.
I'll second that.
Markwart,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Balil,
Aye.
Webb, Green.
I, consider approval of resolution number 2020-0015, declaring an emergency by a 2/3 vote pursuant to Title 60, Section 176.I of the Oklahoma statutes as amended, and Section 2.7 of the Blackwell Municipal Authority Purchasing Manual, authorizing the trust manager to enter into contracts with third-party contractors relating to the electric distribution system repair and replacement and cleaning up storm debris. Due to the ice storm of October 26, 2020, with a maximum cost not to exceed $100,000.
This is where I'll refer you to the information that Corey put together for us, the information on the ice storm 2020. And we've totaled that at the bottom, and you'll see it's just shy of 70,000. And that is not including, I think we have 3 other municipalities that have not billed us. And just FYI, mutual aid does not mean it's free. I was hoping it did when people called to offer mutual aid to us for the ice storm, but as we see here, it is not free. We had to pay, tree service to come in that was a little over $24,000, for the work that was done there, but I hear they were a fantastic tree trimming crew. And they got in there and helped us out with a lot. Now, we had our own, crew that was designated for that as well. But these guys were go-getters and they had the right equipment, for it. So, then OMPA, as you see, sent 1 to 3 trucks and they had 1 to 4 personnel over the 4-day period. And that cost, was over $10,000. And, Davis Sanitation, believe it or not, that is not free either. And this is in addition to our normal monthly, cost that we pay them, somewhere, above about $42,000 a month. And now, we owe them about 28, it'll probably be about 30,000 by the time that we're finished. And that is for all of the, storm debris that was taken, to the, the convenience site, that's located here in town. And we did ask our residents to help us with that because, we have a crew of about 8 or 9 in our Park and Streets department. And they're just not able to do everything, so we were asking the residents to help. And the supplies that we had were over $6,600, so you'll see that total right now is right at $70,000, but we have 2 crews from Bentonville, Arkansas that we've got to get billing from, and also 1 in Kansas. So what we're asking in this resolution is, right now my authority is only $75,000 for an emergency, but as you see, we're gonna go over that. And so I'm recommending that I have authority up to $100,000 because I could have exceeded that. However, we have our bi-monthly council meetings, so I can bring this to you, and I feel like that in a 2-week period, probably $100,000 on emergency spending will be sufficient. Bryce, would you wanna?
No, I think you've said it, that's, it's required to spend any more money. Otherwise, we would have to, we would have to, there's bids to take, there's, all this time, and, you've still got, people out of, electricity, out of power, right?
Right, and, as you know, in an emergency, it's necessary to take action immediately. And I was on the phone with almost all of you during that time, for one reason or another, talking to you about what was going on. We had 90% of the town, the city that was out of power. And I will say that in a normal situation, this was not normal. This was just totally, this ice storm was horrific. Lots and lots of tree limbs that broke not only our power lines, but also our power poles, and caused a lot of people a lot of discomfort and a lot of work as well. But we were able to come together and get things done. We made decisions, and Mr. Mayor, I would like to thank you for recognizing our staff as they worked on that, and the council for recognizing them. They jumped right in and got busy, started making calls to me. At that point, my job is to approve and to get things done and to work with Tracy and make sure that we've got money for things, make sure we've got food for people that are working, and lots of things like that. But it takes money for that to happen. And as we found out, it's gonna be in excess of $70,000, and that's so close to what my limit is that I feel like I need just a little bit of a buffer going up to $100,000 so that I can comply with the authority that this council gives to me.
Well, I also would like to add that the one thing that our crews here, along with their help, did that really was impressive to me was we had last Saturday another deal with the wind, and which took out over 2,000 people in Oklahoma City, because those people trimming back the trees didn't get them trimmed back. So once again, the wind whipped them into the deal and they all went out. So, they had, of course, a lot worse storm damage. I couldn't believe it. I went and drove the area and it was amazing. Any other discussion, council?
This just, I mean, it's just for this one instance,
Yes, yes, absolutely. And we have this on the city side. This is also on the BMA side. This is a BMA resolution, but because, you know, it has to do with streets, we have it here, but it really is a BMA resolution. We just, you know, we wanted to talk about it often because it's, it was of utmost thought of the residents when they were out of power, I'm sure. And with all of the storm debris, I suppose still stacked up. I mean, it was everywhere. Enid was hit, Norman was just destroyed like Oklahoma City was.
Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second. Markwart,
Aye.
Braden,
aye.
Khalil,
Aye.
Webb,
Aye.
Green.
Okay, J, consider approval of request to seek bids and a request to approve bid specifications for a compact track loader for the use by the street department. Good evening, Jeff.
Good evening. During our debriefing discussion and staff meeting covering the ice storm, one of the things that was talked about was the lack of equipment trying to deal with the brush that we had to deal with. And it was brought up that it would have been beneficial to the city, to our employees, to be able to have one of these compact track loaders with a grapple bucket where we could efficiently remove the brush that we had to deal with, especially like in the alleys where we had to clear out so that the electric department could get in there. Instead of having guys going there with chainsaws and dragging stuff out, if we'd have had one of these pieces of equipment to move the brush and deal with it, it would have been beneficial to us. Now, that being said, there's a host of other uses that we could use this piece of equipment for. Working bases on the streets. If we'd have had this piece of equipment back last summer, when we paid $20,000 to have our ditch out on the highway done, we could have used it for that, because a lot of that work was done with this piece of equipment. And there's a host of attachments that you can get for these pieces of equipment. You can get everything from mowers, post hole diggers, jackhammers, brooms, there's snow plows. It's pretty much unlimited what you can get for these things. So we're just asking for permission to seek bids to try and get one of these pieces of equipment.
Are we talking about a skid steer?
Well, originally we were, but I think we would be better off with a compact track loader, which is basically the same thing, only has tracks, but they're more stable for inclines like we had out there on the highway. They're better in muddy situations, snowy situations, things of that nature, because they have a larger footprint on the ground. So.
Any other questions or discussion, council?
One of the attachments would be, I think, some jaws.
Gravel bucket, yes, sir.
Could have used for
Yeah.
picking up.
It would have been really handy. Also, we had a lot of brush that was piled up down at the fairgrounds. We had to pick up. It would have been really handy for that kind of stuff also.
Do we know what kind of, did you check in, see what attachments cost?
No, not specifically, I didn't. The only thing I would be looking at right now would be a grapple bucket and just a regular utility bucket. I mean, later on down the road, we could look at other attachments possibly.
We have one similar to that at work, and it has all kinds of attachments on it. You can work your, like you said, your base up, spread your rock, and like in alleys and things of that nature, you could work that base up, and just a lot of different uses for it.
The attachment is unlimited. They've got everything
take it these are heavy duty that will last
Yes, sir.
just about against anything. I'm sure it has a maximum.
Now, this is just one brand.
Okay, that's exactly what I was thinking. Okay. Yep.
There's several different brands, but that's basically what we're looking at.
Any more discussion? Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Markwart,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Khalil,
Aye.
Webb,
Aye.
Green.
Aye.
Thank you.
K, consider approve of request to seek bids and a request to approve bid specification for digital radios for police department, street department, city hall, and library.
And this
And,
is,
sorry. Also, I would like for the council to look at the information on the ice storm and read the information at the bottom paragraph. And this is the reason they're asking for help.
Yes, and after, the ice storm, we have done, 2 storm debriefings, and that's where I bring everyone together and we look at what we did well and what we can improve on. And, one thing that we realized was, that we did not have radios that would communicate across all of our departments. And it wasn't that long ago that, the fire department went out for, bids on radios, and these would be the same type radios that we're looking at. And so, those costs, the estimate that we have of, completely across the city, without any discounts or anything, are gonna be in excess of, we think, about $70,000. Because each one, I think, ended up costing almost $700, and Corey can speak to this. But we discovered that, we had to use cell phones, and the cell phone towers were not working. So we had a difficult time communicating where our staff, were, and, Corey, I'll let you pick it up from there.
There were some, personnel from other departments, such as the street department, went over to help the electric department. They didn't have communications, so as they were cutting the trees out of the power lines, and the power line crews were restoring power, they were having to try to get a hold of each other on cell phones. If they weren't able to do that, they had to get somebody over there to physically see that the tree line crew were out of the power lines so they could re-energize. That way, if there was a malfunction, nobody got hurt. If they would have had the communications, then they could have just did everything by radio and would have saved a whole lot of time instead of a lot of running around, because they may have been trying to energize power lines on the west side of town and somebody in the tree power lines on the east side. It was just a lot of wasted time, I thought.
Is the communication bridge in the TRT trailer where you could use it with the digital radios?
We've got a digital radio for it. He just hasn't had time to install that for us yet. But that was purchased with the loan money. Yes.
I'm curious, was the library included?
Well, we could have used their personnel. Didn't realize they were available. At one point, we were looking to maybe open up the event center for a warming station for people to come, plug in their oxygen machines. But I didn't think about the library. That's my fault for not thinking about that personnel. But I called preachers. I had called several other people that I thought could come in, man that for us, because we didn't have the manpower to have city employees sit there. And so that will give us communications with the library also.
Council, any further questions? Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Markwart,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Khalil,
Aye.
Webb,
Aye.
Green.
Aye.
L, consider to approve request to declare fleet department scrap materials and related items as surplus that are no longer in service and no longer useful for an additional purpose, and direct disposition as city council or city manager directs.
There's a pile of used parts we've taken off cars, or not we, they've taken off cars, such as struts off the police cars, rotors that are bad. Those chunks of metal are just too big to throw in the dumpster because it'll damage the trash trucks. So it just kind of accumulates, and right now there's a big accumulation of those type of items, and we just need to surplus them, get them out, or get rid of them.
Council, any questions?
Is that what, it's primarily down at the, behind the, electrical department?
On the north side,
Uh-huh.
yes, sir.
It would be well if we would, get rid of that. It always makes me, feel kind of nervous when when we're asking citizens to clean their yards up, and
I agree with you 100%.
we have
Looks
something like
bad.
that.
Well, you have to remember that we're not allowed to throw anything away unless y'all give us the authority to do it. So,
We need to put bids up.
All right. Council, do I hear a motion?
I move we accept them.
I'll second that.
Markort,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Balil,
Aye.
Webb,
Aye.
Green.
Okay, consideration to approve request to declare police department server room items as surplus that are no longer in service or no longer useful for an additional purpose, and direct disposition as city council or city manager directs.
You should have a list of about 19 items. Those were all given to me by Kevin. We've done a lot of upgrades to that server room and stuff like that. He's went through everything and made sure that there's no hard drives in it. It's all been wiped clean, and it's just old. There's no longer useful for the city. So his recommendation was for us to make a list and get it to you guys for surplus.
So do we have a specific company we're gonna send those to?
I was looking with, when Cindy Gaddis got into the recycling stuff, I think there's a computer recycle center over at Ponca City. I was thinking about just taking it over there,
Yeah.
seeing if they would take it.
One thing that I might suggest is Best Buy, Staples, over there, because they can take those insides that you haven't done anything to and basically build a new one. So,
I mean, there's several, we'll look at
and
options.
they've got the licensing and all that.
Sure.
Is needed. But I do know that sometimes, depending on how new they are, you can even get some cash back for them, depending on how new.
Yeah.
All right, council, any discussion? Thanks, Dwayne. All right, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to clear that server room, item surplus.
Seconded.
Markort,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Balil,
Aye.
Webb,
Aye.
Green.
Excuse me, I gotta pull my paperwork up here. Okay, let's go ahead. Do we have any other business? No new business? Okay, we'll call this adjourned. We'll now open up the Blackwell Municipal Authority. Okay, the consent agenda, all items listed are considered non-controversial and shall be approved by one motion of the governing body unless a request for discussion of an item is made by a trustee. After discussion of the items, further action may be taken as deemed appropriate by the governing body. A, minutes of the regular BMA meeting minutes from 11/5/2020. B, requisition register, items for payment. POs have already been issued and funds are encumbered. C, payment to card services in the amount of 255.56 for BMA credit card purchase for the month of October 2020. D, approval of the receipt of DEQ permit number SL 00036190910 for emergency sanitary sewer relocation project. Council, do we have discussion? Being no discussion, do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Markwart,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
O'Leal,
Aye.
Webb,
Aye.
Green.
Okay, number 3, business. Discussion, consideration, possible action. A, discussion and update from Cohen Engineering, Phil Briggs, PE project manager, on completed and current water and sewer projects.
Hello, I'm Phil Briggs with Cowan Group, and just want to give you an update. I've got a list of the task orders we have open, so I was just going to go through those. The first one, the sanitary sewer maintenance, that was 4 tasks. That just got completed. There's some as-bills that we're still fixing to send to DEQ, so we'll have those on record with the state. The FEMA cost estimate to help Corey, that's all been completed. We're still working on the DEQ consent order on the sewer, which is the flow study. And we were trying to model what was done in 2001. There was a study done on your system. We set the flow meters and everything in the same location. What we found is either something's changed in the system, or the original report, the flows weren't where they said they were. We can look in the basins and see a pattern going through it. It's showing up in another area, not the one that was shown before. So we're having to do some more investigation on that. There's about 75 manholes that we're going to go out and look at and see what's happening out there. So we're in the process of doing that. The sub-consultant we're using, they should be out there probably first week in December and start that work. Let's see, the water treatment plant review, we're still looking at that. That's ongoing along with the engineering report we're doing for your water distribution system. I'll get more into that in just a second. The sewer trunk line repair, the main trunk line, we've actually gone back and looked at repairing the line from the wastewater plant over to Coolidge. That's still all the old line. That's still that old clay pipe. That's still in the back where the trees have been over it and roots got in it and has damaged the pipe. I'd hate to have a brand new trunk line all the way and then right in front of your sewer plant you have a bunch of old pipe that is going to be harder to replace. Right now it's plugged up. A lot of that line's restricted. It's going to be a lot easier to fix that while that line's restricted than it will be once we get that full flow coming to the plant. So we're looking at that. We did shave some of the other line off to try to offset the cost and try to keep it in that number that we talked about originally. The Santa Fe sewer collapse project, we've kind of shifted our priority over to that trunk line for now. As soon as we get that ready, we'll have that, we'll shift back to that. The trunk line improvements, we're almost completed with those, so should be probably the first week in December we'll have those ready to have you approve. And if you do, we can go out to bid and get that going. generator, we had our consultant out here, our engineering, electrical engineering consultant out here, met with the city staff, and they were pretty helpful to let us, to talk through how we're gonna get rid of all the overhead power out there. I mean, it's pretty dangerous to have all the overhead electricity out there at a water plant especially. We talked about looking at running another circuit out there, so if we lose one, we can switch to another. It looks like we may actually be able to run 3 different circuits out there at some point. In addition to the generator, along with what we were doing with the generator, we were generating a water treatment plant master plan. And the reason we did that was because there's a lot of things going on out there, and we don't want to be tripping over ourselves. And right now there's other buildings and improvements that we don't want to get in our way while we're doing this stuff. So we're trying to, come up with a master plan to show where everything's going to be, all the water line, all the underground, any above ground, and where the sewer line or where the generator needs to be, so it's not going to be in our way and can do us some good down the road. And we're working on the water line replacement from 4th to Main, so that we can get you a permit for DEQ, so Jim can get that put in and do it the right way. We're also working on a proposal for you for the AWIA compliance. What that is the EPA passed another regulation. The AWIA stands for American Water Infrastructure Act of 2018. It's got a lot of homeland security stuff that they're wanting you to address. Emergency response, it's a pretty exhaustive thing that you've got to do. Most towns are behind schedule on getting that done. I think yours was due last month or a couple months ago. That's not uncommon for most towns, because that's a lot of work to do. So I'll be getting Janet a proposal on that here, probably by the next council. The GIS, the Geographic Interface Infrastructure System, which is basically your water system, sewer system. We did aerial photography, high resolution aerial photography of the town. That'll be in there. You'll be able to go on the internet, click on it, and look at the town, the photos. We've done planimetrics, which basically converts the photos into just a drawing. So instead of having to look at the photo, if you want to clean it up and look at something that's easier to read, it'll show the curb lines, it'll show buildings and things like that. It just won't have the photo behind it. So that's another feature your GIS will have. We've got a full-time person in our Oklahoma City office that's dedicated to working on our GIS stuff. We've got some others coming in our Tulsa office that we're going to be teaching them to do that and having it so we can have that capability out of that office as well. And then the water distribution, on the engineering report we're doing for that. We've been working with Corey on the ISO, trying to help get the ISO ratings of your system up. We're starting with the existing system and looking at where these locations are for the fire hydrants that have a specified fire flow that they require. We're looking to see what we have to do right now with your existing system to shore that up and get those flows to where they need to be. And then we can look at infilling any of the other lines, all your lines need to be replaced, but we can prioritize with the ones that are going to help you get your ISO rating, get your insurance rates, help with those. We had we had all the tanks inspected, the Saturday and Sunday after the ice storm, which was really helpful for me because I had no idea what was inside that underground clear well, that concrete clear well. You know, there's a lot of chlorine and stuff that's mixed and put in there. I figured the top was shot. Most of them I've seen, I've had to go in and replace parts of the tops of them because that chlorine gas comes in there and just eats that concrete up. To my surprise, the concrete in that looked really good. I mean, it was, I didn't see any spalling and flaking. I mean, for being as old as it is, which was what, 1929 or 6 or something like that, it's in really good shape. So that was encouraging. We also went inside the 2 ground storage tanks there at the water plant, and that was also helpful because we don't have plans on the big one. You know, outside we see penetrations, we're not sure what all's, going in and out of that tank, but being inside we could see it, we could see the shape, condition of the tank. They also did the smaller tank, the west tank. We found that roof on that thing is in pretty bad shape. The joist, the steel joists that are in there, they're bent. That top is, I mean, you get a lot of ice and snow or something settling on that thing. We're gonna have to do something because it may just fall in on us at some point. Not right now, but it's heading that way. Also, I had some contractors out here to help me get an idea what the SCADA system would cost to completely automate the system we have, the water system. That would include being able to control the pumps out of the diversion dam, all the way completely through the entire system, monitor all your tank elevations, turn on and off pumps, reset, set points of where you want it to operate if you need to. It would operate all the valves in the plant right now that you have to take a hose and plug it in and get some juice to it to make it operate, which is kind of outdated. The stuff's been breaking down, but Jim's been doing a good job keeping everything working, but it does need to have a little more TLC to get it where it does work like it should. And also, one thing I did want to say too is when I was looking at the diversion dam out there, there's some sluice gates down at the bottom. There was some pneumatic operators in the pump station that actually, they could open and shut the sluice gates at the bottom. And those have been, the lines have been cut. There's no way to operate them now. And it's been like that for several years. The result of that is, the purpose of those sluice gates, you open those things up and it gets the velocity up, and any dirt and debris that's building up behind it, it flushes it out and it keeps your storage volume up. When you're not able to do that, you get dirt and debris stacking up, and you only have a couple of feet of water. The rest of it's all dirt. And so we really need to get those back in service so that we can open them up and let that flush and let it keep your capacity up behind that. Because part of what that's doing is, with the mud and debris backing up behind it, your intake structure that's over here to the side, that mud and stuff is starting to get over into that, where normally you would just have an open pond, and what we're doing is just kind of making a big old mud.
Big salt plug.
Yeah, big plug. So, I'm going to talk to the divers that we had, because they do repairs and things like that. I'm going to see if that's something that they can take a look at for us and see if there's something maybe get an estimate on what it would cost to repair that, put that back in service. So think that would go a long way to helping us with that situation. And, let's see, also, I should have a pretty good idea on cost for all the things that we can talk about with the water system, you know, everything from the diversion dam, those sluice gates. I'm gonna have cost on that. I'm gonna have cost on the pump station, what needs to be done to get that up to snuff. The lines from there to the reservoir. I've got estimates on what it would cost if we built another reservoir beside it and another line back to the water plant, just from top to bottom on your system. And we had talked about doing workshops where they wouldn't be we wouldn't have a quorum, no decisions would be made, but it's just something we could talk about and get an idea of what your feelings are and what direction you'd like to go, so I can cater the results on the report to match what direction you'd like to see the improvements go. And so we will probably be wanting to set those meetings up in January. So I'll get with Janet on that and try to arrange some times or see when people are available that we can do that. And what I'd like to do is have, like, you know, I'll be here all day with some other folks from our office and just, you know, maybe have some people in the morning and some in the afternoon, or however, you know, whatever works. But that is something that we'd be wanting to do right after the first of the year. So I think that's it.
Yeah, in case you can't tell, Phil is here a lot. We do a lot with Phil, but, you know, it's necessary to gather the information that we need so that we know where we are. We are still requesting documentation from MKEC, and Bryce has been helping to try to gather that together. You know, there are just a few things that we just need more information about, and some of the things just were, there's not enough documentation available. So, but in January, as Phil said, he should have a pretty complete understanding of what we lack, what we need, and how we need to go forward. So we will be scheduling some of those meetings so that they can be informal. You can ask questions. There won't be a quorum, so we'll have a couple of council members at a time so that we can answer all of your questions for that. But anyway, they've done a great job, and I think even Jim Hoos approves, so maybe.
I figured I'd get that.
I would say from all you have covered, we're talking multiple millions.
Well, it's up to you to decide how much you wanna do. I mean, I'm just gonna show you what your options are, and then you can tell me what you wanna do.
Would you be making recommendations?
I'll give priorities. I mean, there's certain things that are gonna have to be done right now, and then the rest of them are just whatever you feel like doing. Or you can just set a schedule up and say, we're gonna do these improvements this year, this batch next year, just schedule it. I mean, it's gonna be your decision.
Okay, but you'll make recommendations, or as you said, set priorities. Say,
Yes.
this has to be.
Right, there are some things that we can't not do right now. I mean, cause there's some DEQ, things pending that they're making us, do certain improvements, and so those will be listed as priorities. So.
That's what my question was gonna be, to make sure that we have those DEQ requirements up at the top of the list, so we don't have any fines to deal with.
Right.
And I know that anytime they could walk in here and start that process,
Right.
from what I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't put them at the top of our list now, they'll put them on the top of the list for us, so.
Exactly. Any other discussion? Any other questions? All right, Phil.
All right.
B, consider to approve request to declare water department scrap materials as surplus that are no longer in service or no longer useful for an additional purpose, and allow disposition as the trust manager directs.
We just have a rather large pile of scrap that we just built up over time, and it's starting to get pretty good size, so we'd like to get rid of it. And then Kent would like us to move the next pile a little bit further away from his area he keeps clean, so. So it would be a nice thing to get rid of before it gets out of hand.
So, all right. Do you have, any idea on this surplus? Is it something that's gonna be some sort of special?
No, it's just piping, old hydrants, wires, just
Has any
holes.
DEQ
Yeah.
aspects to it?
No,
Okay.
this is just general scrap.
Any more questions for Jim?
I would be curious if we might have one central location where we can, store all this scrap until such time as we decide to get rid of it. I can drive by the water plant and drive by the electrical plant and not always pretty. So I'm wondering is there a location?
We generally keep it out at the waste plant, for us, but when it gets muddy out there, we have to, anytime we get too much, get stuff like that, and it's too muddy, we have to wait until it dries up, so they'll toss it out at the water plant. They're supposed to transfer it later, but sometimes they get tied up. Sometimes I want them to do, other stuff, I don't know. They get kind of busy.
Well, it's out there, it's probably not an eyesore to too many people.
No, nobody can
Out
see it.
there, down here on back here at the water plant. Just a thought. But I would, I would approve the request. Nobody's got any.
No, I'll second that motion.
Markwart,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Balil,
Aye.
Webb,
Aye.
Green.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. All right, C, consider approval of updated Blackwell Municipal Authority Purchasing Manual.
Yeah, well, last December, you adopted the Blackwell Municipal Authority Purchasing Manual and the Blackwell Facility Authority Purchasing Manual, and we have those both on the agenda, on the various agendas today. There have been some changes to state law, and so we have made those changes in the manual. One has to do with emergency purchases, and that's the very thing that you did today. Under state law, you can authorize your city manager to have up to $75,000 worth of authority. I think our manual said 35,000 or something. You need to keep it consistent with state law. You already have an ordinance that says that, so keep everything consistent. That's in two places in the manual, and then there's a change to the Public Competitive Bid Act of 1974. And so everything that I have here, I've underlined and deleted to show you what the state law changes are. The only non-state law change we have is a provision that just allows us to use, when we do this surplus, these surplus actions, which you just did, that the ability to use a purple wave or some other kind of competitive bid site in order to sell surplus materials. So we put a provision in there. So everything else is just the way it is. We'd ask that you adopt the amended purchasing manual, which is consistent with state law and that surplus provision.
Council, any questions?
I'll make the motion to approve updated Blackwell Municipal Authority Purchasing Manual.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Markwart,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Balil,
Aye.
Webb,
Aye.
Green.
Aye.
D, consider approval of resolution number another, declaring an emergency by a 2/3 vote pursuant to Title 60, Section 176.I, of the Oklahoma statutes as amended, and Section 2.7 of the Blackwell Municipal Authority Purchasing Manual, authorizing the trust manager to enter into contracts with third-party contractors relating to electric distribution system repair and replacement and cleaning up storm debris due to the ice storm of October 26, 2020, with a maximum cost not to exceed $100,000.
The exact same item that we talked about before in the proper authority, we would ask that you approve this, resolution.
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
Harcourt,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Balil,
Aye.
Webb,
Aye.
Green.
All right, is there any new business? With there being no new business, we'll adjourn the Blackwell Municipal Authority and proceed to the Blackwell Facility Authority. Number 2, consent agenda. All items listed are considered non-controversial and shall be approved by one motion of the governing body unless a request for discussion of an item is made by a trustee. After discussion of the items, further action may be taken as deemed appropriate by the governing body. A, minutes of the special BFA meeting, minutes from 11/5/2020. B, requisition register items for payment. POs have already been issued and funds encumbered. Any questions? Do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Harcourt,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Balil,
Aye.
Webb,
Aye.
Green.
Okay, number 3, business. Discussion, consideration of possible action. A, consider approval of budget amendment number 5. B, consider approval of updated facility authority purchasing manual.
I think we heard the explanation from Frank, of what this budget amendment was. Allocating the dollars in here that can be used for the various, fields and, arenas that, are subject to the lease agreement between the city and the PFA.
Council, can we get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the budget amendment number 5.
Second.
Harcourt,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Balil,
Aye.
Webb,
Aye.
Green.
B, consider approval of updated Blackwell Facility Authority purchasing manual.
Yeah.
Council, do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Harcourt,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Balil,
Aye.
Webb,
Aye.
Green.
All right, with no business, anyone have any questions? Great, let's adjourn. Thank you, everybody, for being here.